Well, hello everybody. I finally got a tape here, so I have a chance to talk to you all and let you know what's happening over here in Vietnam. Well, I must really say that it's been quite interesting. I've learned so very much, as I usually do, of course, that I'm really kind of glad that I had the chance to come over. The people here are very interesting. It's kind of hard to describe them. Of course, I've often called them little people, and that's really what they are. They're very small, they're a very slight race of people, but yet we can tell very easily that they're human. And without getting into too much politics, I really think that we are doing something for them over here, and we are helping them. Without us being here, I'm sure that a lot of them wouldn't be alive today. Well, anyway, on the brighter side of it all, I just got back from Tuluá today and had the chance to fly on a helicopter again. I guess I've been up in a helicopter about 10 different times now, flying to Tuluá and all around the place. As you fly up there, you can see the countryside. Most of it is mountainous, and it's all heavily wooded. However, there isn't real jungle in this part of the Vietnam area. We're on the coast here, and I seldom get more than 20 or 30 miles away from the coast. Often, from one side of the ship, you can see the South China Sea. And as I've described before, that's always a beautiful blue. Of course, down at Tuluá now, they've been having a lot of bad weather in the South China Sea down there. It's kind of dirty. Looks a little bit like Rye Beach. As I was flying up from Tuluá today, I saw a lot of the little grass huts where the people live in, and the pilot was only about 40 feet off the ground. Now, the reason for this is that we had a full load of people in the chopper, the colonel and everyone else, and he wanted to wait until he used up some of his fuel so he could get some additional height. So when we got about halfway to Quy Nhon, he started climbing, and we started to fly over some real interesting areas, including the road that we're working on. There's going to be a lot of changes around here in the next couple of weeks or so. One of our companies, which is located south of here at a place called Miami Beach, is going to move up north. Now, they'll only be up about 30 miles or so, but the place is called Bon Son, and it ought to be pretty interesting. What they're going to be doing up there is building a big bridge, 1,600 feet, and I've had a chance to do some of the planning on it, and I really feel pretty much involved in it all already. Tomorrow I have to go up there to that Bon Son area and see if we can't get the real estate so that they can get the right-of-way to go ahead and build the bridge. Our A company, which is down in Tuluá now, is going to move back here to Quy Nhon, and they'll be providing maintenance support for the company going to Bon Son and for the company that's here in Quy Nhon. Old Delta Company, where I was at before, is going to stay down in Tuluá. We have a little bit of a problem down there now with security. If one of the companies leaves the compound, they'll be pretty much out there on their own. So we may move them to a bigger compound over at the Air Force Base. Time will tell, but anyway, I've got a chance to do a lot of the planning on it. Guess this is a good time to say hello to the girls. Jane, are you listening there? By the time I get home, boy, it's going to be hard to believe how big that you've gotten. I hope you don't have very many regents this year. If you do, you know the old story. You just have to study hard so you can get ready to go to Chattanooga. After all, if you want to go down there, you have to be a #1 student. And, of course, Mary, every time I go out on the road here, I kind of think of you. I see all the girls your age going to school. That's right, they do go to school. Maybe they dress a little bit different. They wear what we call silk pajamas, but then again, it's kind of hot over here, so they're kind of comfortable in them. They also wear these straw hats, Mary. I'm going to have to bring you home one. It would look real cute on you. And they bring their books to school. Most of the high school girls do, and so do the grammar school girls. So they're really a lot like you. The only difference is that they're over here where there's a war going on. And Bridget, what are you doing now? Are you listening to me? Well, you'll have to get on your old tape recorder and send me your voice. That way I can tell everybody that this is my sister Bridget talking. And, of course, Mom and Dad, I guess you're still holding your own as usual. I hope that Diane's doing all right these months as they pass by so quickly. Diane's written a lot of letters, just like you have, Mom, and I'm sure glad to get them. It's always good for the morale purposes. I hope that you received the photographs that I sent. As I said in my letter, I took those all with my little Kodak camera, and I've really been pleased with the color and the quality that the little camera has given. Everywhere I go now, I try to take a few pictures so that I'll have a record to keep for the times to come.
I was part of the 84th Engineers, which was a construction battalion. I was the earth-moving platoon leader, and my responsibility was basically to build roads and install bridges on a series of roads. The roads we were building were originally built by the French in the 1950s. They had a lot of repair problems and many potholes, but the main problem was with the shoulder of the road, because the shoulder of the road, with many monsoon seasons, had been washed away, and it also washed away the road. The bridges, also built by the French, after decades of warfare, had been blown up by the Viet Cong. And I loved the opportunity to brief the generals, when occasionally they would fly in on a helicopter 300 miles from Saigon. I relished the opportunity to talk to them, to tell them about the wonderful accomplishments of my young American engineering soldiers. And during the briefing, I would always have at least one private available, usually a grader operator who was highly technically qualified, and I would introduce him to the generals, and everybody was a winner. Building roads and repairing shoulders could be hazardous work because we were always subject to ambush. Also, there were prostitutes who would come by on motor scooters in their finery, everything pressed, but if you looked at them too long, they would take a hand grenade and throw it into your Jeep or your truck. But the biggest hazard that we had was with mines. The shoulders were made out of dirt, red laterite. At night, when we went back to our camp, the Viet Cong would mine the shoulders, and if our mine detector didn't pick up the mine, young men would die. It was very hot building these roads, and every day we'd take a lunch break. We'd sit there on the side of the road or in a rice paddy eating our C rations and K rations, which was canned food. It would be dirty, there would be bugs, but it was American food. And yes, once a week, a chuck wagon would come. Chuck wagon was a truck full of hot food to serve us a hot meal. It was then that I realized that this was going to be a very difficult war to win. We were a conventional army with all the conventional support troops, just like cooks. Our enemy was a very vicious and cunning enemy who used guerrilla tactics, and I knew winning the war would be difficult. But I also learned a lot about briefing, and even to this day, I relish the opportunity to speak before a large group, particularly if I have an opportunity to show the great work of those that work for me.
Thanksgiving has come and gone now. It's really kind of a nice day here in some respects. A couple of unfortunate things happened that made it kind of sad. Well, first off, some of my old platoon had a lot of trouble down in Tuiwa. 5 members got ambushed by the VC right on the road where I had worked many times, and a mine was exploded and one young fellow was killed. really that's why I went down to Tuiwa today. They had a very nice service for him, and they had some nice letters written, and the colonel spoke some very kind words, as did the chaplain. When it was all over, it was very military-like. They had a bugler there, and he blew taps, and it was kind of funny. I guess my eyes are getting a little bit watery as I'm saying this, but for the first time, you really realized that as they were playing taps, it wasn't a movie or anything, that it was the real thing. And I'm sure it's an event that I'll always remember.
For it's Christmas in the jungle, and there won't be any snow.
Of course, I did want to have the chance to say Merry Christmas to everyone. I guess I've missed a lot of Thanksgivings and a lot of birthdays, at least to miss them by not being in New York in the last, 6 or 7 years, but always managed to be home for Christmas. So this time I won't be there. I guess there's a lot of other people, a lot of young fellows in particular that are in my case too. But I did want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas. I know when you're opening presents and everything that everyone will get a little bit of remembrance from everyone else to just kind of show the mutual affection that we sure have in the old Klein family. I don't know what kind of celebration we'll have here. I imagine I'll pick up a little Christmas tree somewhere and probably put it in my room. Of course, on Christmas morning, I'll be thinking of everybody there. Remember the time that I brought Ming Ling home, and what a big thrill it was for him to be in an American home on Christmas. And believe me, I kind of wish that I had a chance to be there this year, but really when you think about it, it's really a little sacrifice that I have to make for so very much that we've gotten out of the old USA. And again, I think that the sacrifice certainly is worthwhile. So I hope Pete gets home in time to give you some help putting up the tree, Dad. And I know Mom will be up late with Jane trying to get Santa Claus to put the necessary trimmings on and everything. Well, I see the tape is running out now, so again, let me close by saying Merry Christmas to everyone, and of course a Happy New Year. Be sure to say hello to the Archibalds, the McKennas, Nanny, all our relatives and everybody else, and tell them that it won't be long before I'll be home. And of course, let's hope that next Christmas can be a real happy one, and that the whole family can get back together once again. So I should send another tape sometime soon, so be listening. If you want to send one back, you can use this little box that this one comes in. You just decide whatever is best. I've kind of got a kick out of using the tape here. I guess I'm learning how to use it. Maybe my next one will be a little better. Maybe I'll have something a little bit more important to say. But anyway, it may beat the telephone. So from Quy Nhon in Vietnam, it's time to say goodbye. Merry Christmas and good night.
And there isn't any mistletoe, for it's Christmas in the jungle, and there won't be any snow.
When we started building our roads, we were at an engineering base camp in Quy Nhon, but we always built and rebuilt the road heading north. And as we built the road, we got farther and farther away from the compound. And finally, one day, a few weeks into the project, we found ourselves 50 miles from the engineering base camp. And it was too far to drive every day with heavy equipment, bulldozers, tractors, scrapers, water distributors. So we arranged to stay with the Vietnamese in a small village. And this was really a wonderful opportunity because for the first time, I got to meet the real Vietnamese people. We were staying at a little place that was a MACV compound, Material Assistance Command. There was an American major, a lieutenant, and a sergeant, and me, and 16 of my assigned men. And we really enjoyed the opportunity to be with the people. And for the first time, it wasn't Americans guarding us at night. It was a band of small Vietnamese soldiers commanded by a colonel, and they were excellent in providing our security. One day, we had a visit from the elders. Now, the elders, you have to know, were really rice farmers. But on this day, a Sunday afternoon, when they came to the camp, they wanted to see my engineering equipment. And they dressed in Western garb. They wore white shirts, pressed pants, and even Western hats, because they wanted to impress the Americans, who they felt had done so much for them. And I enjoyed showing them the big equipment, the Clark 290 tractors that picked up so much earth from the ground, and the water distributors. And the cans that you see around, the big black cans in the film, were filled with liquid asphalt. You see, to rebuild the roads, it was too complicated to have big asphalt machines. So everything was in liquid. We'd pour the liquid out, we'd heat it, then we'd spray it on the road or on the shoulder of the road. And the elders were very impressed. And of course, in my typical way, I was hamming it up, trying to impress them, because after all, we had come here to serve them. And to my surprise, when it came time to leave the elders' village, just before I left, they asked me to undertake a project to clean up their marketplace. The marketplace was the center of activity for the village, but it was dirty. Pigs roamed freely. Human excrement was all over, and it was filthy. So, although it was dangerous, because we had to undertake this work at night, the only time we were free, we decided to help the elders. And we cleaned up the marketplace. Now, there was a danger at night, because we knew this area had a lot of assassins. So we had to keep good security in order to help the elders. Sadly, in 1975, when the Viet Cong finally took over this area, they rounded up the elders, brought them to the very marketplace that we had built for them, and they assassinated them for being collaborators with the Americans. And the favorite method of assassinating people was to cut off their heads. Now, I'm very proud that on a wall in a dark corner in my house, I have a little scroll that the elders gave me. They presented me with the Vietnamese Civil Works Medal. Oh, and the scroll is in Vietnamese. No one understands it. But when I walk by, I always think of the elders.
We listened to President Nixon's talk the other morning again, and of course, I guess you know by now, he said that they were going to withdraw 50,000 more troops. Well, it really seems like that's just a drop in the bucket. None of us really expect to be part of that. The road project down near Tuiwa still has about 3 months' work on it, and they keep loading my old Delta company on with a lot of other jobs to do, building special compounds and repairing airfields, things like this. So the road gets left, and they just have to wait until they can get to it to do it. They've got a lot of real good engineer equipment down there. This equipment comes from the United States. Things like these cement mixers and dump trucks that have a real great big capacity, and very large bulldozers. And this type of equipment comes under what they call the MCA program, and they have civilian instructors who come over here and teach the young fellows how to operate this equipment. And it really helps the road effort when you have some of this real good equipment working on it. I don't guess I'll ever get to learn how to operate any of it. I don't think I'd really want to operate it in civilian life anyway.
but it might be interesting to learn. But they do have a restriction that officers over there can't drive, so I guess that kind of leaves me out. Well, hello, Bridget Kathleen, and how are you? I wonder what you're doing right now. Is school getting any better? I bet you like it very much, like you always have. Bridget, if you got lots of good presents for Christmas, you can write me a letter and you can tell me all about them. I tell everybody here that I have a sister named Bridget, and they really think that that's a real pretty name. And Mary, how are you? I don't want you to cry now, but I just want to say hello and see how my sister Mare is doing. Hey, Mare, how was your chair? Remember you used to say, "Hey, Tom, how was your bomb?" And I used to go, boom. Very good, very good, very good. And Jane? Well, I guess you're really getting along now. It must be time to finish your third year in high school. Just think, by the time I get back, you'll be a senior. I guess that means you'll be pretty important. I hope you'll be able to graduate. After all, even Pete made it in 4 years, so maybe you can do the same. I guess you plan to continue to go to good counsel for your last year. It'd be kind of funny to change in the last year, wouldn't it? Well, anyway, then you can look forward to college or an airline stewardess job or something like that. Really, that's about the best year when you're a senior in high school, because you've got everything in front of you.
In fact, the very first night that I was in Vietnam, I went to my little engineer camp at Tuy Hoa, and I had just met my men. I hadn't even unpacked my bags when we got word that a truck was stuck in a ditch. And my young men went out with their gun truck. They wouldn't let me go with them. They thought I was too green to rescue him. But just as dark fell, the young men got attacked, and their gun truck was blowing up with a rocket. Then I found myself, first day in Vietnam, with my captain in a Jeep, speeding out into the jungle on a dirt road, looking for our 4 men. And as I tried to return fire, my M1, my new weapon, jammed. So my first shot in the war didn't work. Fortunately, we were able to save the 4 young men. But ambushes were common. And in this clip, there's a house. One day, as the transportation people were moving convoys up and down the road we were building, and my men were very close to it, the Viet Cong took over a house and attacked the convoy in ambush. They used machine guns and rocket-held grenades, and young Americans died. I was in a Jeep on my way to the road site, and I talked to my sergeant as he explained what was happening. I said, "Sergeant, take cover." He said, "Sir, we are in cover. We are returning fire. No one is hurt in our unit." And I was very thankful. Then, as I approached the site, American helicopter gunships came, and they descended on the house. Then the transportation battalion had their own guns. These were 2.5-ton pickup trucks with iron sides and machine guns, and they descended on the house. Sadly, none of the Viet Cong were killed. They had escaped through the rice paddy into the jungle and up into the mountains. And when I arrived, even the medevac cap helicopters had already left with the dead and wounded Americans. Ambush is a very favored tactic of people who work in guerrilla warfare, and I've learned a lot about it.
One of my biggest jobs here, now that the pipeline has been accepted, is that I arrange for all the helicopters that have to take our people down south, up north, wherever they're going. We have a helicopter pad right out here in front of our compound. Our compound is surrounded by mountains, as you probably saw from the pictures. And there's a lake right out in front of the compound. The lake drains into the South China Sea. But anyway, this little helipad is right on the lake there, and
choppers from all over come flying in. Today I arranged to have one of these big Chinook choppers come in and take a band from the Philippines, take it down to our B Company, which is about 40 miles south of here. So we got everything straightened out, though, and they're all headed down south now, trying to give the troops a little bit of entertainment for the afternoon. That's something we have quite a bit of over here. These shows come through. We've had a couple from Australia, a couple from Korea, and the majority of them are from the Philippines. They're generally the rock and roll type, but it's kind of nice to relax at night and get your mind off of everything. Occasionally the show will be playing and we'll have an alert. Now they call an alert when the enemy situation warrants such, and everybody goes to their bunkers and mans their position. Fortunately, all the times that we've had to go out to the lines to man the positions, there really hasn't been any difficulty. Some of the compounds in the area have had some trouble, but we've been kind of lucky. I guess all in all, we're in a pretty secure area, and that makes it a little bit easier to work with. I was sitting in the office about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I had been on the officer of the day, and I had just got back from inspecting the guard post, and all of a sudden we got a call from our communications section saying that one of the compounds right near us had noticed a sampan out in the lake in front of our compound. Well, being the security officer, I knew that those sampans were out there, and I was aware that sometimes they try to come too close to shore. They have some pretty dubious missions up around us, but never mind, that's not too important. Anyway, we were able to get a big light shining on them. We have a light up in one of the very high mountains here in Quinlan, and the light provides illumination for areas where there's suspected activity. So we got the light onto the sampan, and then we deployed one of our tanks out there, and he let the sampan have it with a machine gun. Unfortunately, they missed the man in the boat, but they did get the boat. And the next morning, my sergeant and I went out there to look at it, and we had to wade halfway out from a rice paddy into the lake to see the sampan, and it had a few holes in it, and it was really kind of small. It was like a very small canoe, and it was just made out of straw or something like that. But anyway, we were alert, and it was kind of an interesting experience, and I don't guess anyone here has ever sunk a sampan before, so in a way it's kind of a first.
When the generals came to visit me this time, I was living in a tent camp called Woolly Bully 2, near Kontum, right near the Cambodian border. It was called Woolly Bully 2 because the tent camp of engineers Woolly Bully 1 in 1968 had been overrun by the Viet Cong, and all of my predecessor engineers were killed. This time when the generals arrived, I was worried because security was a big problem in this area, being so close to Cambodia. So before their helicopter landed, I had Vietnamese tanks securely hidden in the woods just in case there would be a problem. And I showed them everything we did. One of my finest accomplishments was to show them a machine that I invented, which allowed us to spray Pentaprime, the liquid asphalt, on the shoulder of the road while running on the roadway. So instead of in the morning having to drive a truck up the shoulder, which was made of dirt and may have had mines, we were able to drive up the center of the road. And this invention was adopted for all engineers throughout Vietnam. And in the group of people that visit us on that day, there was a friend of mine, Lieutenant Ken Rogers from Ohio. You see, his boss, Colonel Adams, when he found out that I had a master's degree in engineering, wanted me to become his aide. But I begged the colonel to let me stay with my men in Woolly Bully because I really relished the opportunity to lead these men and to help protect them, and they did such a wonderful job. And the colonel agreed, and Ken Rogers became the aid. Sadly, if I had known what was going to happen on that day, I would have hugged everyone who got on that helicopter. I would have held them so tightly. I would have thanked them for being Americans. You see, just a few days later, on June 5th, 1970, the same generals and Ken Rogers were overlooking other road sites, and to get a good view, they had to fly very close to the jungle canopy. They were very low. But on this day, the Viet Cong were waiting for them with machine guns, and they shot down the helicopter. And in an instant, everyone that you saw on the film was dead. Colonel Adams, the pilot, and of course, Ken Rogers. So today, nearly 42 years later, not a day goes by that I don't cry and think of the horror of that moment and the sacrifice of those great men.
Uno, dos, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, now for the big news. Of course, you all remember when I was down at Tuiwa, and then had a chance to move up here to Quin Yon, and then after being in S3, had a chance to move over here to Charlie Company. Well, today I got some kind of good news. I have to take 17 men from my platoon, which cuts it just about in half, and a whole lot of equipment, and go west and then north. Now this is going to happen on Thursday, and I'm going to a place called Woolly Bully, of all places, and this is north of Pleiku, between two cities. One is Kontoon and the other is Dak To. Maybe you've heard of those places. In the past, there's been a lot of activity. Well, the story is that one of the units up in that area, the 815th Engineers, is getting ready to pull out. But they're working on a highway up there known as QL14, and it doesn't look like they're going to finish it. So my platoon has been selected from the 84th Engineers to go up there and work on all the shoulder repair for this QL14. And we're going to try to help them finish up the work on their road that they're doing so that they can get withdrawn. In a way, it's not too bad. I get to make all the arrangements to move the people out of here and get them security on that lawn trip and everything. It will take about 6 hours to get up there, and on the way, I understand you get to go through some real mountainous areas that have some real historic interest points, and also you get to see part of the country again. The road up there goes right through the area where the Montagnards live. Maybe you've heard of that tribe that has been doing all the fighting on our side over here. Well, anyway, I'll get to see some Montagnards maybe on Thursday when I head up there, and I'll be sure to take some pictures and I'll send them home to you. One of the sad parts about going up there is that just tonight I found out that my whole platoon that goes up there, and myself included, are going to be living in tents. So in a way, it's really going to be roughing it. But I'm kind of anxious to get up there and see what this place, Woolly Bully, is really like. They tell me that I'll be staying up there about 6 weeks. So unless I write home differently, you can just go ahead and send your mail here to C Company, and I should be able to get the letters from there. Well, time keeps rolling on. One of the things that I don't think I'll ever forget about the Woolly Bully area is, first of all, when you wake up in the morning and you look out to the mountains, and you know that just over the hill there is another country, the one called Cambodia, and you can't help but wondering why you're here and not over there, and if you'll ever be there, and if you are, what you'll be doing there. But although we were close to that area there, it wasn't too much different from here. Although I guess the potential to be different was there, okay. The Montagnard people are something that really made an impression on me. I don't think I'll ever forget them. For someone that is stationed permanently, say in Pleiku or in Kontum, somewhere in that area, they'll maybe not notice them as much as I did, but for me, I had the chance to compare them with the Vietnamese, who are all you see down here in Quy Nhon and Tuy Hoa, places like that along the coast. You just don't see any Montagnards, but up in the mountains, up in what they call the Central Highlands where we were, you do have these Montagnards. Kind of an interesting race of people. In the morning, you can see them starting to go out on the road, and they just wander all day long. The women, usually maybe 10 or 12 of them, will get together and they'll walk along the road for miles and miles, and then all of a sudden disappear off into the woods. And they usually have a type of blanket tied around their back, and in this blanket they have a baby, and just like the papoose with the Indians, except it's just a little blanket. And of course even the little children carry the babies around on their backs. Must be kind of a little change for them anyway. Usually when you're working far away from a compound in an area like that, you can't get out onto the road to work until the whole area you're working in is swept for mines, and until some security unit comes through and checks out the area. I guess they usually start doing that type of thing by 6:30, and sometimes it finishes about 8 or so. Up where we were, since there were no American tactical units, except for a little special forces outfit, there wasn't too much. The Arvands did all this mine sweeping and everything. And before these Montagnards could get out and wander along the road, they had to wait until the Arvands were through. And the way the Arvands sweep a road is they walk real quickly up there with a mine detector, and as they're walking they have a tank along either side of them, and they fire into the woods. So that's what they call reconning by fire. And if there's anybody in the woods, they're liable to get in the way of the fire. Well, anyway, that's another one of the interesting things over here. But the Montagnards are truly interesting. One day we stopped a man on the road and was talking to him, a little old man wearing his fig leaf arrangement, and that was about all. But he had this strange thing in his hand. It was a little stick, and on the end of it, it had a piece of wood that was carved out like a cup with a little rope and a little trigger device in it. Well, this was his rat catcher. And what he did, he put the piece of bait in this little cup and stuck the stick in the ground, and when the rat came after the bait, the little trigger set off, and a little noose made out of twine caught around the rat's neck and strangled it. Well, we couldn't understand why he'd be wandering around the streets trying to catch rats. It didn't take us long, though, to find out that the reason he wanted to catch them was so that he could eat them. And I understand that they take the rats and they put them in their rice. And that's what they have to eat. As I've already told you in my letter, on the road opening ceremony day, which was Easter Sunday and was the 29th of March here, everyone turned out for the big affair, and they had a ribbon cutting ceremony, and the area that they chose for the ceremony was right in the area that I had done the work with my platoon. Of course, I was real proud to receive the little Bronze Star medal, and it really made the whole trip worthwhile. Well, I did want to say hello to Jane and Mary and Bridget. Hope everything's going all right with you in school. If it makes you feel any better, by the time I get back, which is just a few months away now, 5 to be exact, gee, you'll be out on summer vacation, and you'll be able to play around and everything, and you'll even be thinking about going back to school by the time I get there. So study hard and goodbye, everyone. Say hello to Nanny for me. I'll write you a letter soon, Nanny.